All right. Hello. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Splice Poetry Series. It's great to see you. Thanks for coming out. I know we all got parties to go to for Pride Week, which is great. Okay, so we had a little hiatus last month, a little COVID uptick, but we're back and more ready than ever. Tonight we have Alina Stefanescu and local Skye Jackson reading for us tonight, reading some poems, some really good work. And so it is my honor to bring up Splice's own Sean Monroe to introduce Skye, and we'll get this party started, huh?
Welcome back. What's up, Daniel? Hell yeah, all right. Got a tasty little crowd tonight. It's good to see y'all out here tonight. It's fantastic. So Skye Jackson's poems don't tell us anything. They show us realities firmly grounded in space and time to drill into the hyper-sentimentalities of nuanced personal and social cultures and the static electrifying the space between those two modalities. Her poems use these particularized imaginations as a calibrator in sense-making and unmaking, wherein old rationalities dissipate into new practices of attention and ultimately into new veins of cognition and behaviors. Skye Jackson was born and raised in New Orleans. She has served as a poetry editor for Bayou Magazine and other publications. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in Electric Literature, Green Mountains Review, Rattle, and elsewhere. Her debut chapbook, A Faster Grave, won the 2019 Antenna Prize. She was also a finalist for the 2020 RATTLE Poetry Prize. In 2021, she won the AWP Intro Journals Awards and was twice nominated for Best New Poets. Her work was recently selected by former U.S. Poet Laureate Billy Collins for inclusion in the Library of Congress's educational programming. In the spring of 2022, she was crowned the winner of the legendary KGB Annual Open Mic competition in New York City. Poets and Writers has also recognized her as a New Orleans poet to watch. Please welcome to the Splice stage, Skye Jackson.
At the Saturn Bar. Partied and drank here many days, but never read any poems. So I'm really excited about that and just happy to be here with Alina and read her work in here. So I'm going to start off with an older poem. It's called Far Too Kind. I'm going to read some New Orleans poems for y'all. Far too kind. I walk into the dining room and sit down as candles light up a thicket of white faces that surround me. Across the table, a lady smiles at me and says, "God, I loved your book. It was so real." She talks as everyone else meddles with their slick Mandarin salads and listens. My mind is still outside, uptown on Peniston, circling the block in search of a place to park. I flip my big twist out of my eyes, check my teeth for lipstick in the rearview mirror. I find a spot as a white woman draped in the shadow of a dark mansion across the street has stopped to watch me. Her platinum hair shines, white as sin, under the streetlights. Her gaze sharp, like an elegant heel pinned into the nape of my neck. I lock the car door, turn to her and smile hello, but she doesn't respond, just stares. As I walk up to the house, fumble with the fence latch, still aware of that stare that followed me to the dining room table, that passed me the coq au vin, that poured another rush of Bourgogne into my glass, that crushed me with polite conversation. My hand shakes slightly as I finally respond. Thank you so much for reading. You are far too kind. Thank you. This poem is called Can We Touch Your Hair? At the parades, everyone wants to touch my hair. On the corner of St. Charles and Marengo, I am cold and smashed and puffy AF. When two white women try to convince me that they love my hair, no, they really, really do, they say, because it is so black and thick and curly and soaking up all of the water and the damp air. The mousy one says through an Alabama drawl, God, you can do so much with it. And her blonde friend says, you can't do a damn thing with mine, won't even hold a curl. She runs away to grab another friend and says to her, Stacy, isn't it even prettier than Macy Gray's? We just love her, don't we? They circle me and ask, can we touch your hair? Then, suddenly, just like my ancestors long ago, I am pulled apart soft by pale hands from all directions. Poems. They get me so worked up. Man. Let's see. Okay. This one is called, sorry, my voice is weird. When the half-black man I'm in bed with calls my hair nappy, I can hear it so clear again. The sizzle of my hair straightened sharp to blade, and that chemical smell, relaxer, white and deadly, stirred thick in a plastic cup. My nose burns before it is even applied to my roots. The stylist adjusts her plastic gloves to protect her hands from what she's about to smear across my scalp. She sighs, parting my budding curls into quadrants. Resigned, she whispers into my ear as though this is something to be hidden. Your hair is so thick. And then all I remember is the waiting, and all I feel is the burn. I see it all in that second he turns his light-skinned body away from me in bed. Laughing, he says, you and this nappy hair. Hope I don't wake up with any of your little curls in my mouth. His thick cruelty, cold as butter, and intimate violence brings me back down south to the hot comb in my mother's hands, the tub of blue magic hair grease on the bathroom counter, always empty, to the Saturdays wasted in salons, or the chemical burns, each a pulsing scab, round and hard as blood-fed ticks, dotted across my scalp, hidden beneath glossy, straightened hair. I open my mouth to speak and want to say to him, tell me again how much your white mother loves you. But instead I say, my curls are beautiful. I love my hair. So quiet that I can't even convince myself of it. But he's already fast asleep. So I've been writing a bunch of new poems about resigning from my job. So this one is called The Remote Year, and it's inspired by Jericho Brown's Duplex. form, but I call my form a gentrified duplex. So this poem is called The Remote Year, a Gentrified Duplex, after Jericho Brown. I begin the new job remotely, hoping to grow there. I train on the new job remotely. Boss says, you're getting nowhere. My managers discuss me remotely. Over Teams, they say, Skye is the worst, I swear. I suffer in the attic remotely. COVID WebMD tells me how much time I will need to sweat there. I don't need sweat to be hot. I don't need to be hot to be mad. I sit at my computer remotely, hoping the emails eventually stop somewhere. I reconcile with my ex remotely. He asks me, what's keeping you occupied out there? My best friend consoles me remotely. Skye, you can't quit. It'll get better, I swear. My mama prays always remotely, says, Skye, I can't wait till you get the hell up out of there. I soak in my fancy new bathtub remotely. God damn it, I've run out of Nair. At work, I dodge the ghost of MLK Jr. and Elvis remotely. Though my boss ignores my emails, he still yells, Skye, why wasn't I made aware? HR says, if I leave, I get no severance. Damn, I tell my therapist, ain't that a bear? I finally close the computer remotely, hoping the good hell ends there. This is another resignation poem. On the day of my resignation, I am unaware that it will be the day of my resignation until my boss informs me so. He asks if I will move to California for work in 2 weeks. I say, with the way you act, oh hell no. I meet Richard for coffee. I speak to a pig behind a fence. I speak to HR. I answer emails. I walk somebody else's dog. I order a pizza. I drink all the wine. I call my boyfriend to tell him, but I still can't cry. I run through the rain. I get to G's Pizza at 8:30 p.m. Across the street, I see a white girl wandering around a cemetery, trying to be cool. I think, why search for the dead in the dark when you can just find them scrolling down your newsfeed? My phone buzzes with a work email. I realize that emails are just less interesting headstones. All names, no faces. The dead as white and populous as my inbox. I can't keep track of them all. This is my last resignation poem. A coworker asked me how I feel the day after my resignation. You know that scene in Batman, the one with Michelle Pfeiffer, when her boss knocks her ass out of that skyscraper window because she knows too much, and the cats, bless them, bring her back to life. And the next day, she comes back to work with frizzy hair, very pissed and very off, like total Pet Cemetery vibes. And the boss is surprised she survived the fall. And she is surprised she survived the fall. And Michael Keaton thinks it's all very hot and strange, but he doesn't know what the hell is going on. Yeah, well, I feel nothing like that. That's good to know. Thanks for asking. That's how all corporate conversations feel. It's just like, what is this farce that is happening? This is another recent poem. It's called My Dad Doesn't Know How to Fight the Wasps in the Mailbox. So I give him some advice, like the kitchen oracle I am. I Google how to chase wasps from the mailbox. And Google suggests dryer sheets, or building a fake nest to confuse them. Also, a potion of essential oils to spray, clove, geranium, lemongrass, and rosemary. My dad says, every week I chase them away, but they still come back. I nod and I scold. Don't you know we're in a housing crisis? Good real estate is hard to come by. I don't know, he says. I'm just starting to take this whole thing personally. I say, Dad, last week I got drunk at our bar, and they were playing this footage of a frog protecting its nest of tadpoles on a leaf in the rainforest. The wasp kept trying to steal the eggs, and the frog kept kicking and kicking the wasp away with its long, sticky lime legs. And then the wasp got pissed and ran away to get its friends. My dad gives me a blank stare. I say all this to say, 1, wasps are the assholes of the animal world, so don't take it personally. 2, somewhere out there is a frog on a leaf in the middle of the rainforest who feels exactly the same way you do. So don't feel alone. Does that make you feel better? I think so. Good. I don't know how I do for time.
Keep going.
Okay.
Keep going, yeah.
Okay. This poem is called Grocery List for When My Ex Comes to Visit. Seltzers of all flavors. That green salsa he likes. Avocados. Wine on tap. Tomato sauce. Epsom salts. Candles for every room. Whiskey for balcony hot toddies. Condoms. Amazon black lace teddy. Amazon black lace stay-ups. Various meats. He'll want steak. Coffee. Bread. Deli ham. Another mug to finally place next to mine. Black beans. Eggs. Tissues. Matches to start a fire neither of us will know what to do with. A gift. Lucille Clifton divination cards. Later in my kitchen, he will pull one from the deck. It reads, "Today we are possible." Exactly 3 beers. The strength to watch him walk through the door. The acceptance if he chooses to walk out of it again. And scissors to cut down my braids when he flies out on Monday morning. This poem is called The Day I Was Born. My father does not remember the day I was born, the events, questions that were asked of him. Like when my mother's placenta burst like a supernova, and the doctor asked him, "Who would you like me to save, your wife or your daughter?" He didn't know that my parents weren't married, didn't know that my father had no say in the matter. So the doctor turned to my mother. "We may very well lose the baby," he said. "Who would you like me to save, you or your daughter?" My mother dipped her head and closed her eyes as I began to drown inside of her, like one of those children lost in the dark of the river. She turned to the doctor and said, "We are both going to live. We are both going to live." Poems. Let's see. I will read 2 more. This poem is called Spoon Rest Mammies. On Tuesday at work, my manager, a brown Latina married to a black man, approaches me. With a smile, she sets something down in front of me and asks, "What do you think about these?" I look down at a porcelain spoon rest shaped into the swollen figure of a mammy. Her lips exaggerated and face dark like the bark of a dead tree. The dress painted Jemima red with a white apron tied chain taut
around her waist. My heart races in its cage. After a second, I say, we shouldn't sell these. They are offensive. My manager purses her lips, sighs, and says, but they sell, my dear Skye. People buy them. 2. At the end of my shift, a Latina woman with frizzy bleached blonde hair stands in front of me. She says, I'm from California, just buying these for my kids as a joke. They're gonna be so mad, she says. They're gonna be so mad I bought these. She hands me 2 of the Mammy spoon rests, says, make sure you wrap them up good. I'd hate for them to break on the flight back home. So I protect them in paper and bubble wrap, carefully place each one in a plastic bag. You know, the lady says, your store shouldn't carry these. I hand her the bag, smile, and say, but they sell. 3. 3 weeks later, my manager hands me a cardboard box. I open it. To all the spoon rest mammies gathered together. They smile up at me from the guts of the box. My manager says, I tried to donate them to Goodwill, but the guy accepting donations said, I won't sell these, but if you want, I can throw them in the dumpster out back. I'd be happy to do that. One last poem, if I could find it in my crazy pile. This poem is called I Have Only Been Back in New Orleans for 2 weeks. I have only been back in New Orleans for 2 weeks. When I learned about the 3 children that fell into the river and drowned, trying to save each other. Or when they found that girl in Slaughter, rotting in 12 years of her own filth, under the watchful eyes of her parents. When 6 people were shot at a bar on Magazine Street. When 3 children dragged a woman to death in Mid-City. When the DA decided to try those 3 children as adults. When I sat in City Park having crawfish and strawberry mead and my best friend asked me why I took him back, but not if I was happy now. When my mama told me the last thing my father said before he left was, I'll see you in court, but he didn't take the dog and just came home a few hours later. When my little brother called from LA needing more money. When my older brother called from the East needing more money. When I kept putting off quitting a job I hated. When he texted me from New York saying he needed me. When the mayor sent out her condolences. When she did it again the next day and the next. When I told my mama they needed to put the parents of the rotting girl under the jail. But they didn't even arrest them until almost 4 months later. When one of the bodies of the drowned children washed up on the Mississippi riverbank. When the 3-year-old got shot on Burgundy. When the mayor offered more thoughts and prayers. When my best friend asked me over cocktails at the Hotel St. Vincent, Skye, why won't you just come home? And I asked myself, Skye, why don't you just come home? I hear myself telling her, I never left. And now I don't know who to believe. Thank you.
One more big hearty round of applause for Skye Jackson. All right, y'all. It is now my great pleasure to introduce Alina Stefanescu. I wrote a little something to get us grounded here in Alina's work. Alina Stefanescu's most recent poetry collection, Dur, takes its title from the Romanian word that is untranslatable into English. The collection's epigraph describes the meaning of dur as, quote, a state of unsated longing or yearning, yet is also marked with, quote, a tinge of pleasure, a kind of coalescent emotion, paradoxically rooted in distance that brings together pain and pleasure, absence and presence, longing, yes, but beyond that, longing's hinterland, the swaying grassy swath between the two, the animal nesting, maybe even trembling there. Dur's placement in the modern world might be rendered a kind of if you know type wisdom, one that is transcultural as well. The Swiss-German modernist Robert Walser, in a letter to his sister, describes a kinship of Dur. Quote, where longing is concerned, it is first off superfluous, secondly comprehensible, and thirdly incomprehensible. It's superfluous because it merely burdens one, comprehensible the way an illness is comprehensible or a sin, but incomprehensible because so many people are unable to live without this superfluous thing. Because so many people engage in longing, wasting away in longing, and finding themselves unable to extricate themselves from it. Indeed, they even find a certain sweetness in longing, end quote. What is central then to Stefanescu's poetics is how even the most contradictory of materials, ideas or particles of the stuffing betwixt the two, have a potential to blend and fuse, splice. They splice into a kind of linguistic kinship that, if not an amalgamation, at the very least can orbit one another. For instance, take the poet's approach to the mammalian animal embodied by us highfalutin humans, as we more frequently like to define ourselves. As one poem deliberates, aren't we all the same question at some point? Likewise, this poet came into being in a confluence of cultures. Stefanescu was born in Romania and raised in Alabama in what the speaker of the poem Un-American Litany calls a family of alien residents with cabbaged accents. A poetics of pungent vegetables sprouting out the tongue. As another poem puts it, we couldn't know what would grow there. We knew only to hunt a limitless stanza, a god, a poem, a lantern, the lacrimae of land-filled dolls. Lacrimae being Romanian for tears. I can't help but think of the South's heat we suddenly find ourselves in as our pending summer begins its turn inside out. An air that surrounds us that simultaneously stifles our breath yet opens up our bodies at the same time. As another poem declares, enough glossy green bunting drooling out of mailboxes, each American house with its own filmy, full mouth. Stefanescu registers a poetics that reminds us ours is an art not of a haziness of definition, but rather draws upon the exactitudes hiding within a kind of mysticism. Language, after all, can be argued to be the ubiquitous mysticism that rules our day-to-day lives. And this is apparent in the poet's proclivity toward metalinguistics within her work, one which doesn't push back on the language so much as sniffs out its meaning. As one speaker notes, quote, inside every word hides an argument, a jury of dim alleys. This does not render the poet as either judge or executioner for these jurors, rather merely an open window to the court. The meta-nature of these poems is as self-reflexive as a beating heart, the fat centers we share together as mammals, reminding us that to use language is to live, making the world a flat page for us to roam freely, to feel a rock through the toes, and endlessly the animal within us searches for its laughter. Oh, transience, remind us that our hearts are at most home on foot. Grant us a heart that departs from those, quote, safe suburbs of logic, who so often, too often, want to pin us and grit us, and instead let us slip in a door. Alina Stefanescu.
Damn. Thank you for that poetic introduction and that deeply thoughtful reading. I'm just it means a lot, and you read me very, very well, better than I read myself, so I'm so grateful for that. I'm going to take off my glasses because I actually can't see to read with them anymore. This whole thing happened over a pandemic. And I'm going to start with an old poem. I'm going to start with the day, June 19th, 2015, when I was in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and I dropped off my kids for the first time. They were all old enough to be at a little camp together that we could afford, and it was a theater camp. And I was so excited. And I dropped them off. I had an hour. It was an hour long. And I went to a cemetery that I'd never been to that was across the street from the place where this camp was. And I wrote this poem for the stud muffin who is not here tonight, who is with the kids. It's called The Letter Under the Sierra Club Magnet. You get this in my grade. The letter is written in red ink on heavy sketchbook paper. The letter says he misses her. The letter says she can't doubt the existence of a house and car and children between them. She mustn't rush to judgment, for he has the mortgage papers in a manila folder to prove it. Stamped by a notary public, the letter says she should take a deep breath and remember their intense desire for one another. She should trust that desire. She should consider how much money they had blown to satiate that desire over the past decade. He has receipts for airline travel to prove it. Some are digital receipts. The letter says she is complicated and not an easy woman. Her parents agree. She is hard to live with. But he is not making excuses. The letter says he misses her so damn much, he doesn't know how else to put it, or where to put the missing, some way to fill the blanks. And who would have thought empty places get sore over how much it hurts to find nothing there? The letter says the problem with empty places is hope. No place is empty and unexpectant. No empty place accepts its hollow core. Every vase in the kitchen cabinet wants to be filled. But empty is mute. It can't speak. The letter says the problem of missing her is that the part that needs her is a place that is absolutely empty and no sound comes out unless you fill it a little, and then it reminds you of how much more space needs to be filled. The letter says he didn't sleep well last night. He kept thinking about love and the way love's glass is never half full, but mostly half empty. She mustn't mistake his anger for lack of love. They shouldn't count sheep when their thoughts are full of empty glasses. So the reason I wanted to read this poem was because when I came home that day, my husband was at work and I was going to share a poem, and he came home and he asked a friend to come over, and she came over and went inside and hung out with the kids, and my husband looked at me and he took me outside and he put his hands on my shoulders, and I remember that he didn't, I didn't hear the words, but he mouthed, I think he must have said them, but he said, "Your mom is dead." And I just saw him say that, and then I remember cars going by and screaming. I remember pulling my hair out. It was sunny outside. It was a gorgeous afternoon. Cars were going home. And I remember wetting my pants. Like all of this it wasn't happening to me. It couldn't have been real. And this strange thing is that the day that that poem was written, all of these things happened. And for me, that's poetry too. There's this strange space in which I'm always addressing my mom, because she didn't live to get to see me publish a book. So she's here in the room somewhere, always, when I'm reading, and she's laughing and she's like, "Read the really bad one, Alina, make them very uncomfortable." So I will do that for her when I do. It will be for her. But also just to acknowledge
the person who put their hand on my shoulders and who still does, and who I will also read some poems about tonight. And I may not trash him, but I may also trash him. Love is complicated. So now, going back from the really dark space I just dragged y'all into, I'm going to read some poems from Doesnt, which is the book that was mentioned. And one really cool thing about Doesnt is that it's kind of like the blues, so it's like happy, sad, so you're like really bummed because you can't have this thing and you can never have this thing, and finally you're making this music just thinking about it, and you're kind of happy just making the music. And you don't really need the thing. There's this other thing that happens, and so Doesnt is kind of a creative process too. I'm going to read Pickled Plums. Pickled plums, I dub them, those 3 citizens of my womb, the ones I didn't deport. Although I know plums are hard to grow on foreign soil, plums are finicky, unreliable, quick to revolt or pout. Like my mother, I planted a Romanian plum sapling in the northeast corner of the yard to keep evil away. Like my father, I take 3 thimbles of tsuika before dinner to prepare the throat for what the mouth may say. Tsuika is plum brandy, sort of like American men have their barbecue, Romanian men have their plum brandy recipe. And they will get into the discussions about whose plum brandy is the best. And if your man doesn't make plum brandy, he's not providing for the family. So there's this sort of like, it's a cultural thing, and it's also illegal. So when my grandfather came to the US, he was like, my mom was like, you can't do this because we have Baptists around us. And he's like, what do you mean? Because you have to make this metal thing, this metal contraption to basically get the plum. And he was so upset, he was horrified. He's like, how is this free country if we cannot make tsuika, And it was, there's always this sort of dialogue between these different cultural norms in my family and the what's normal and what's good and how that depends. So First Crush Doina, Doina is a Romanian kind of folk song. First Crush Doina. And do any of you know like Orthodoxy, Eastern Orthodoxy? Yeah, okay. My mom was Orthodox, so she would have monks sometimes that lived in our house. That she would like have in the basement just to pray for her, so she could like drink and smoke in front of them, and they would pray for her. I'm not even kidding. She really believed that this was effective. So, First Crush Doina. Father Constantine returns from Mount Athos with ashes. They are magic, he says. It's a mystery. I am 13, ready to marry, to pledge my dreams to a monk or nothing. I am going holy or bust. I want a spouse who can never appreciate the world in me. I want a simple fool who will leave his girl for loose frankincense or vespers. I want his kind in all its variations, an anchorite or cave dweller who lives inside a hole God blew into rock for no reason. A stylite who perches atop the capitol of a ruined temple to pray without ceasing. A dendrite who chains himself to the upper branches of a massive tree and sings like a sparrow. A stalagmite that grows up or down, depending on heaven's whim. I want him to crush me. I nourish this canyon in my head for the man in a long black dress who can't love me enough. I think I'm going to read a poem for everyone who is, a poem about abortion. It's called Apologia, which is kind of sarcastic. It's an ancient mode where you're like, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. Here's why I'm not sorry. So I like that the word apologia is just so, I don't know, there's something fun about using it. And so this is Apologia. At 22, I disappeared for a minute. I did not respond when you called me. I wanted the death Alabama didn't offer. I did not want the local D&C option. I refused the twilight sedation, the succor of a specialist doing the deed for me. I have no excuse for what I needed to be guilty. After visiting a former lover in Manhattan, I went to Liberty Clinic, swallowed the first pill, its origins French as the famous green statue. I used Mountain Dew to swallow the final pill on the train for Coney Island. I say Coney when I mean destination, the termination of pregnancy, the train ending in a carnival, apart. The gulls witnessed everything. I stood on the boardwalk, marveling, dumbstruck by dizziness, as something left this body, its warmth flooding my jeans. My hands shook like toy airplanes. No doula or doctor or nurse or friend intervened. No expert stood between my breath and the sky, my breath and the clouds clotting, my breath and the unwanted baby, my life and the blood on my hands. The certain solace, a choice I made with myself. I did it all. I did everything. I wore the silver mermaid necklace for years, a souvenir. And that's a complicated poem to read on a complicated topic. And it's always awkward, usually awkward when my kids are here and I read it. And they're like, Mom? And I'm like, yes. So it's complicated, right? So at the time, RU-486 was illegal in Alabama. You had to have a surgical, and I wanted to be conscious somehow. I don't know why, but it was what I think everyone has. We don't talk about that sort of thing often, but I think everyone has certain ways they process things. So I'm going to read. I should really try and bring something happy to y'all, because it's, again, I can just go deep into the darkness here. The Song in My Eye. A girl cannot live without her shadow. I learned this in Romania from a peasant who refused to walk past a new house being constructed, or declined to stand close enough to the house for the sun to throw his silhouette upon it. This is how shadows get stolen. They are built into something else. I am so afraid of losing, being lost. There is a vampire in my left eye, the one that is lighter, hazel with yellow crumbs. The sun conspires against me. I tell my mom one eye is ruined, one eye is not real, one part is mutt or half mutant, one view is a liar. She bends, puts her knees on the carpet to check, says, it looks fine. Says the eye is entire, and everything is fine, and the word for this is lonely. My mom sings a song that uses her hands to show me. This is the church, and this is the steeple. Open the door, and here are our people. So my mom would say door was the way that you could stay connected with. She said, you Romanians know that word, and they fight over it, and they argue over it. And that's one way to stay connected to the homeland in your head, or to the spaces that we can't entirely touch. So I'm trying to decide what to read to you all. I'm trying to look for something happy, but instead I'll just go to the beginning and read An American Litany, which is the first poem in this book. It's kind of happy. Happy is complicated too. I think one of the wonderful things about poetry is uncertainty can be there. You know, you can be happy, sad. You can be in a graveyard and not be like, there's space for Emily Dickinson in it. So, An American Litany, and this is for your walls. Because I didn't hear how my parents fled Romania, when purple clematis stole my attention, I bless the loss and the losingness now. Because the absence of certain stories haunts me, I bless my grandfather's microscope, crafted to observe the tiniest verbs we imagine, and flown in from Bucharest to rule our Alabama table, an alien resident with cabbaged accent. Because love can be a period costume, I bless the bodice of unforgiven slights that stiffens our bodies. Bless these undergarments worn to guise this longing towards being stripped from a lyric in Tom Waits's throat. Or the random jawbone we never noticed in that part of the yard where we left our clothes. In this heart of taking things off, and for the grace of your beard and a morning, I bless the pre-breakfast tantrum, the after-school scowl, the tucking in of all kinned mammals that bless us with demands for terrible fables, soft puppies, tinfoil crowns. I bless the bed that does not bless me with sleep. Bless the broken-wicked candle. Bless the omnishambles of stars strangled by Birmingham lights. Because you return from work, and failure fails to kill us, I bless the sidewalk with chalk, saying, you, dear sidewalk, are a beautiful molehill of countless rejections. And I scribble these words in bright pink. Because the poem won't come, I bless the boots I've worn to stomp out of the house I've become, to hide from the mouse inside every story I've written, only to pause, turn back, bless this imminent rodent, the courage of its undesired presence, the persistence of its tiny scratchings, the valiance of its wall-crumbling teeth. How am I doing with time? You should just use this. This is always a really good mark. I really like it when someone says, I mean, that's really my favorite way to go off stage.
I'll do that in a bit.
Okay, good.
But
Just
you got
do
time.
that.
You got time.
That's my language.
Noted.
I'm going to read Red Chair with Potential. Actually, I'm not. I'm going to read Sabotage. So it is kind of based on I was listening to the Beastie Boys song when it was just running through my head. But I was also just trying to work and doing all of the additional labor. And so this is called Sabotage, or So Much for the Revolution. Sabotage, as in wreck with slow hands, trawling the shores of my flesh, marking the depth of each breath against buoyant prebuttal. As in sinking, the writing I'd rather be doing than rising to meet the loose tendon of words he tongues up my back. Their soft demands, as in deliberately damage the muscles I tense against the gloss of girl mags, training me to please him and blow him's mind through the roof of parked cars, as in cripple with assumed consent, until the ghost of my foreign mother appears in her rosebud nightie, eyes narrowed like terrible hallways, warning me never to fake an orgasm, never cartoon the stars or falsify groans, never Xerox a moan onto your face, as in destroying your ability to feel is the curse of the fakers, the women whose eyes get stuck in faux ecstasy, artificial giggles, as in vandalize, with teensy fib or false rib that teaches him to read you wrong. An error he carries forward when he can't finish a book, as in betray with tiny scissors by lying to a man you want inside you while staging the other lie to smoke him out. As in ruin, the best question to pose before an aching body that craves the shape his hands make of you, the lisp between quake and sky, as in lie. If I do, it is just to say, I am still my mother's daughter. It is to say, dear America, I can't fake it to make it work. So, I kind of want to read new things, but I didn't print them, so I'm going to try to do this on the phone until I get pulled off, which and my wonderful Google Drive works. Just very slowly pulling this out. Thank you all for coming in the rain. This is from the manuscript in progress. It's called Byline B Sky, and it's slowly making its little rounds. Why one cloud is kin to not liking. The reason my husband's family doesn't like me is that I am loud and talkative and elitist. I am a know-it-all book nerd who acts so sure about all the outrageous horseshit that gallops out of her horse-toothed mouth. These are the facts. The park is emptied by pandemic and everything is warm, cozy, abandoned, until one single cloud creeps over the sun and reveals the power of chilling. Go away, my son commands the cloud. I, who would never dare address a cloud like this, can still admire the mammal that is loud and talkative and elitist in his presumptive relationship with condensation events. The truth about clouds is that they haven't happened. They are collections of things which may come to pass or change the sun's frame on a landscape. It rained the whole day of our November wedding like a Guns N' Roses song. The sun came out in time for the sunset. We married for its orangeade eyes. They never liked me. Even then, in my white hand-sewn dress, I was presumptuous. My bare feet were a form of private aggression against middle-class values. In their eyes, I could only be baggage, the single mother he saved. The cloud will move eventually, I tell my son. The cloud cannot be the reason everything is ruined, I tell his family. The park is empty. Where this was published, but it was published somewhere. Ode to Something Elusive. And this is for all of the people who take spray paint and write poetry on the walls of every city and leave their names. To all the taggers. Ode to Something Elusive. Not Ozymandias or love this morning. I could walk to the edge of craving and never quit looking. I followed piety along the tracks, smoked a butt, measured the city's contingents, sucked 2 honeysuckles in lieu of mints. The coal train chuggled past in gold and black. Its slowness militant as the lie a man offers his mistress, harbinger of diamond to come. I came closest. The sky suckled its cold teat. I did not know where I was, what time wanted, an epic, tagged in red beneath the bridge, Dante was. There's a lot of poems about angels. My husband is really into like seraphim and all these weird, freaky angels. They're kind of like, I don't know. But I'm not going to read that because I'm going to read a poem after, and tell me if this is forthcoming. I think it's in copper nickel, but I'm going to end with it. It's after Cesar, is it Vallejo? Vallejo. Cesar Vallejo. This incredible poem that's been translated so many times, Black Stone, and sometimes they even translate the title differently, but I think it means a lot to different poets because it's been translated by so many poets and it changes every time. So this is after Cesar Vallejo, and it's called On the Death of the Day of the Bear. And in Transylvania, Candlemas has these traditions, so it kind of speaks to those. On the death of the day of the bear. I will die on the day of the bear, when frost loosens its lips from lindens, on the day the bear leaves winter's den, to taste the world's unnumbing. People will say, she seeks the sun out of love for her own shadow, the vow of spring and running water. The bear will pause to sip from a stream. After this first drink, the bear is most dangerous. She is wild, they will say of my mother after she flees the homeland. She has died, they will mutter, upon finding her tattered bear coat, the one she wore over an ocean to prepare for American winters. So, your groundhog will gain ground, mark its new time in our minds. And she who died in the shadow of bears will rise in the suburbs, the streetlights, the pines. Thank you all so much.
Keep that round of applause going for Skye and Alina. Skye, you have some books for sale? If you'd like to buy Skye's book, please purchase one with her. Alina, you just accept tips, or you have some books for sale?
I do, and I have this little one that's $3, but it's prose, and it's really terrible. It's just so wrong.
$3, cheaper than a drink?
That's right.
Thank y'all so much for being here tonight. Your presence and attention is the poetry community, and we at Splice are grateful to have you here with us tonight. Please join us next month in July 9th. The stellar Lisa Passel will be reading, with also Sarah Kortmeyer coming in from Arizona. So it should be a kick-ass night of poetry once again. Please buy a drink, tip your bartenders, buy a book, all of the above. Thank y'all so much again. Let's party.
Let's party.